After Denmark was defeated in the Schleswig War, John Jensen and his younger brother Peter left their war-torn homeland to cross the Atlantic to America, carrying with them hopes for a new life. For 7 long years, they worked hard to build a foundation in this new land. Finally, the moment for John to reunite with his beloved family was near. Not long after, he saw Marie and Creston step down from the train, bright smiles blossoming on both their faces. Little Creston greeted his father, while deep affection and tender care were evident between the couple. John proudly introduced his wife and child to Peter, and then they all departed for home. Peter told John that he had some private business to handle in town, so he would stay behind for a while. The happy moment was suddenly cut short when the family stagecoach was forced to stop to pick up more passengers. 2 men with a fierce, dangerous appearance stepped onto the coach. One of them was Paul Delarue, the younger brother of Henry Delarue, a notorious gang boss. Paul had just been released from prison, and his eyes showed no goodwill whatsoever. From this moment, everything began to spiral out of control. That night, while Paul and his accomplice were dozing, a peaceful atmosphere enveloped the inside of the stagecoach. John was teaching Creston about the local animals and talking about upcoming hunting trips, but that silence did not last long. Paul suddenly offered a bottle of wine to the woman sitting opposite him to test her husband's reaction. Seeing the husband dared not resist, he began to push further. He not only insulted John with vulgar words, but also groped the woman by sliding his hand under her dress. John tried to stay calm, using reason to intervene, but the man not only ignored him, but also pulled a gun and pointed it straight at his head. In helplessness and trembling, he had to watch his wife being dragged away and humiliated right in front of him, while his son also witnessed the scene. However, human endurance has limits, especially when one's family is in danger. John quick-wittedly spoke to his wife in Danish, telling her to bite the man's hand to create an opportunity. When the man was distracted by pain, John immediately rushed in to attack. Not wanting the day of the family reunion to be stained with mourning, he told his son to pick up the gun lying on the ground. However, that very decision became a lifelong regret for him. Due to a lack of experience, the boy accidentally blocked his father's line of fire, creating an opportunity for the man to turn the tables. The advantage just painstakingly gained vanished in an instant simply because of John's benevolence. Kicked out of the vehicle, John, fearing for the safety of his wife and child, desperately chased after the stagecoach on the rough road. Although he knew human strength could not match the speed of horses, he persisted and did not give up. After a long, exhausting distance, John suddenly discovered a body lying not far away. He rushed over, but the scene before his eyes made his heart ache. It was his son, the child he had only met when he was born, now separated from him forever by death. Grief and remorse surged, but he knew that all emotions at this moment were meaningless. Wiping away tears, John picked up his son's body and tried to walk on. On the road not far ahead, he saw the stagecoach he had struggled to chase. The coachman had been killed by the 2 thugs, and his body was dumped by the roadside. His wife's screaming tearing through the silent night forced John to suppress his pain. He gently placed his son on the ground, picked up the gun next to the coachman, and silently approached the stagecoach. Seeing a thug guarding the other side of the vehicle, John did not hesitate to shoot the lantern, scaring the horses. When the thug poked his head out, he immediately shot him through the forehead. The remaining one, realizing the critical situation, hurriedly fled while his clothes were not yet tidy. He fearfully begged for his life, but the pain and hatred in John were too great. He coldly unloaded the gun into him repeatedly until it was empty. Witnessing the tragic scene of his wife and the stagecoach, John's dream vanished into smoke. For 7 long years, he had struggled in a foreign land to build a better future for his family. He thought he would have a happy reunion with his wife and child, but it all turned into a tragedy just because of compassion in a brief moment. The situation became even worse as he was about to face a greater threat. It turned out the thug who had harmed his wife was the younger brother of Delarue, the notorious gang boss in the region. Unable to find the person who killed his brother, he forced the town mayor and sheriff to take responsibility. He issued an ultimatum. Either they choose 2 people to be buried with his brother, or he would kill 4 people to maintain order for the town. They decided to sacrifice the oldest person, Wojciech's grandmother. Though unwilling, under the immense pressure, Wojciech helplessly watched his grandmother being deprived of her life. Afterward, 2 detectives drove a one-legged farmer to be the second scapegoat. They hoped these concessions would end everything. However, Delarue was still not satisfied. He drew his gun and coldly shot dead another random person. His reasoning was that a dying old woman and a crippled man only counted as one person, and that choice was disrespectful to him. To punish them, he decided to double the town's protection money from $80 to $160 per month until the real killer was caught. In reality, his purpose in terrorizing the townspeople was because he had discovered an oil well there. Capitalists had hired him to help acquire land in the town, giving him a plausible excuse to constantly harass the people. Peter, John's brother, discovered the front door of John's house wide open. He suspected the house had been broken into by intruders. He cautiously entered with a gun in hand to check the situation. Upon seeing the two bodies inside, Peter immediately understood everything. Without many words, he approached John. Only then did John let go of his suppression, letting tears of suffering fall. With Peter's support, John buried his wife and child in a small plot of land near the town. At the same time, not far from there, Madeleine, the widow of the man John had killed, was also holding a funeral. Deleru, the brother of the deceased, swore to hunt down the perpetrator and declared that from now on he would take care of his sister-in-law. However, Madeleine, in her grief, signaled for him to be silent, as she understood the dark schemes hidden behind Deleru's words. John and Peter drove a wagon to town with the intention of selling all their assets and leaving this place of sorrow. Upon arrival, John was unexpectedly recognized by a couple. It turned out that on the day he was pushed off the coach by the thugs, this couple had been sitting opposite his family. To avoid having to bear the increased protection fee, the woman secretly notified the police. Unaware of this, John still sought the mayor to sell his land. However, the price the mayor offered was only half the amount he had originally spent to buy it. Here, John learned that the thug who had harmed his wife was Deleru's younger brother. This incident caused the protection fee in town to skyrocket, making the residents unable to afford it. To avoid unwanted trouble, John reluctantly signed the transfer paper. After receiving the money, the mayor kindly reminded him to hide the money in his boots for safety. As he prepared to leave town, John felt something was amiss. The streets suddenly became suspiciously deserted, and from a distance, 3 armed men were approaching him. All exits were guarded. In the critical situation, John turned and rushed into an alley but realized it was a dead-end trap. His horse was shot down by the sheriff, leaving John completely surrounded. When John was taken to the police station, Peter was also arrested and brought in. He confessed that he had killed the thug and that Peter was innocent, begging the sheriff to release his brother. However, the sheriff adamantly detained him on charges of assaulting an officer on duty. The next day, Deleru sent a group of men to the town to collect John. Under the witness of everyone, they bound John's hands and feet and took him away. Unable to bear the scene, the woman who reported the news felt ashamed and bowed her head to leave, while other townspeople just coldly observed, not daring to speak up. When John was brought back, he painfully recounted the event. Madeleine understood her late husband's nature, so she did not kill John but only glanced at him and turned her back. Deleru was still pursuing his sister-in-law, so he decided to temporarily spare John's life. As evening fell, John was surprised to see the mayor appear, and even more stunned when the first sentence he said was, "Can I take his boots?" Because he was the only one who knew John hid the land sale money in his boots. At that time, the town church was calling people to weekly mass. Therefore, only the deputy sheriff was guarding Peter. His face still had bruises from Peter's resistance, and now he had to endure Peter's taunts. Facing continuous insults, he could not control himself, even though he knew it was a trap. That night, after the intimate encounter with my sister-in-law, Deleru promised to take her away from here once he finished seizing the town. He believed he had won the heart of the mute woman, as her tongue had been cut out, completely unaware of the uninvited guest hiding downstairs. Before long, a patrolman saw the oil lamp at the guard post swaying unusually and the sentry missing. Suspicious, he drew his gun, approached, and discovered the sentry had been killed. Taking advantage of the patrol team's absence, Peter quickly cut the ropes and took John to a safe place. When the patrol team returned, Peter immediately took them down. By the time Deleru and his gang found out, Peter had managed to help John escape on horseback, rushing off into the pouring rain. On the escape route, John repeatedly fainted and fell off the horse. If this continued, sooner or later they would be caught again. Therefore, Peter decided to hide John in a pile of rocks and then lured the enemy in another direction alone. The next day, John finally woke up after a stupor under the scorching sun all day. He no longer cared if the water was clean or not, hurriedly scooping it up to drink. Suddenly hearing horses approaching, he immediately hid behind a rock. The scene before his eyes was like 1,000 knives stabbing his heart when he saw Peter tightly bound, being dragged along the ground. In just 4 days, he had lost his entire family, and now his closest brother was also gone. Pain turned into determination. John swore to make the thugs pay a heavy price. Delaru returned to the camp, surprised to find the guard shot and the safe cleaned out of money, which only Madeleine knew the combination to. Delaru ordered a pursuit of her, but at this moment she was on a train fleeing, thinking she had finally escaped the bandits to live her own life. But the relief was fleeting as Delaru's men soon caught up with the train, forcing it to stop, leaving Madeleine in despair. She ran while reloading, trying to seize a final chance. However, Delaru's henchmen were waiting to capture her back to the camp. Although he had feelings for her, given what she did, he decided to punish her. A subordinate remarked it would be a waste to throw away such a beautiful body. To appease his loyal subordinates, Delaru decided to hand her over to them. Meanwhile, John was saved by a woman whose husband was murdered by Delaru. After a day of recovering from injuries, John silently appeared behind the mayor to demand his boots back. He did not intend to forgive him, because everyone called the thugs by their surname, but the mayor called him by his first name, Henry, very intimately, reserved only for close acquaintances, implying a secret between them. Therefore, John forced the mayor to open a coffin and lie in it. When he refused, John beat him, ignoring all pleas, and locked him inside the coffin. Only then did the mayor confess to having colluded with Delaru to buy up land. Knowing the truth, John went to a store to buy weapons. Seeing him buy a large quantity, Wojciech guessed John was planning to take revenge on Delaru and decided to join for his grandmother's sake. By morning, Delaru received a coffin. Inside was the mayor's corpse. He knew it was a challenge from John, but when he turned back, he saw fire rising at the camp gate. This was Wojciech's work. After agreeing to cooperate with John, his mission was to distract the bandits for a while. After John finished burning the barn, Wojciech would escape by horse. John hid opposite the barn. Taking down the horse handler was the second step in the plan. However, what he didn't expect was that Wojciech, instead of escaping, returned with a bottle of kerosene, climbed to a high position, and shot an enemy. But the gunshot revealed his position. In the rain of bullets, Wojciech sacrificed himself while trying to cover John. Before falling, he spilled kerosene on the thug who had just shot him. His cigarette accidentally ignited the oil, burning him alive. When John approached the building, he saw a thug restraining Madeleine. Without hesitation, he shot him straight in the head. However, the gunshot revealed his position, causing him to be shot in the leg. In the tense moment, the thug saw John's rifle hidden under the floorboards and thought he had cornered him. But that was actually John's plan. He quickly moved to the other side of the corridor. When the thug looked down, John used a knife to blind him and silently took down the last man. However, Delaru, hiding in the shadows, fired a gun at John. He truly respected the man who had single-handedly wiped out his gang. As he was about to pull the trigger to finish John off, a gunshot suddenly rang out from behind. It was Madeleine, the woman he had forced to be with him. Thanks to Madeleine's bravery, John struggled up, drew his pistol, and delivered the decisive blow to end the fierce battle. When it was all over, the sheriff and his subordinates appeared, intending to claim credit and plotting to take Madeleine away. However, John and Madeleine stood firmly together, not letting them carry out their scheme. Recognizing John's extraordinary ability in taking down the entire gang alone, the sheriff reluctantly retreated. The ill-fated pair, having just met in tragic circumstances, silently looked at each other. Finally, they decided to leave this dark place, seeking a peaceful sanctuary together to rebuild their lives.